You can start. It's got
Okay. So today will be a relatively shorter class, partly because so I'm going to present polar care, which almost seems like what's the point? Everybody knows everything about polar care at this point. But even so, you haven't presented it in this class, so, but there's a part, so this is, as you know, joint work with Rajesh Bhatt, and we have some more stuff that I want to bring up, but I wanted to rethink a couple of things. So I'll present the first part. But before we do that, I want to ask, how are we going to gloss this discovery of ours in the South Asian language? It's not a trivial question because this is how, so in English we know that's the general frame of reference, right? So which N we are basing it on, so we have forms like WHN, and in some languages they came in two versions, right? One that looked more like which, one that looked more like who, that could stand on its own. So that's fine, we could either say which N or the other version would be who N. So people can look at it and they can say, okay, in language X or in these South Asian languages, you can combine who also with a noun phrase, and so fine. And this, of course, is an overt partitive. And as far as I understood from the presentations and from looking it over, this is pretty much what you would expect, right? Which of these, which of those. And so there's nothing special about the WH because these, the un and in, encodes familiarity. So it's good in those contexts where there's a given set of entities that we are drawing that the WH ranges over, and not when it is sort of understood or all you have is some human being. So that is not the problem. Then in at least Hindi, Marathi and Bhojpuri, we have something that now you can say, because I know Hindi, I said, oh, that's like Sa and Si. But what is Sa and Si? Like, I don't know. People, we haven't yet fully described it either, so I was thinking we need a name for it. And in one of the discussions, so I've been thinking, how could we gloss it? Of course, we could say particle. Many things are particles. We could say Q particle, but when you say Q particle, people think of like Japanese morpheme that we saw in our examples, and possibly polar K. But notice that we call it polar K, not the Q morpheme, because it doesn't be Japanese Q morpheme occurs wherever you have a question, right? Interrogative, wherever there's a possibility of a comp hosting a WH. So in a way, we named it polar K because it was a little bit different. So we can't name it that. So what did we come?
QSP.
QSP, which is supposed to stand for question specificity. It doesn't quite, I don't know that it captures. Like the other thing I was thinking, Q dist, but maybe it's not really distributivity, it's like picking out of a given set, but so is this. So if we don't come up with anything, you have, yes, Swarali.
Like it is like it seems like the adjective counterpart of the question word who.
Oh.
So maybe Q A like adjectival question or something.
Why does it seem to you like an adjectival?
Like con, like if Q is the who and
Who?
it is nominal, the same way the
No, there can be a nominal. Oh, you're saying it comes in the middle of a determiner and a
and
N and N?
yeah.
कौन सी अच्छी लड़की कौन? I don't know. It didn't feel like to me like an ad. So here's what the syntacticians will jump on me for if I call it an adjective. They'll tell me, what tests have you run to decide that it's an adjective? And I can say Swarali says so, but I don't know.
It requires a noun after it. It doesn't.
It's what if I say to you, this is a morpheme, a clitic that requires something on its left and its right. Like I'm making this up. So,
Like ma'am, in literature we see simile. I think
uh-huh.
like वो चांद सी लड़की है. So it's
But that's not the same. So I'm sure that Marathi mein, when you make a simile, do you use the?
No.
So that's see. Actually, that's a good point to raise because there can be accidental homophony, right? So chand si ladki and kaun si ladki, one is a simile, a girl like as beautiful as the moon, but then you go to the next language. Oh, अब भोजपुरी में कैसे बोलते हो? चांद सी लड़की. Do you use Jason? So you're not using it. So that could be an accidental homophony. So I'm not going to take too much time. For lack of a better thing, I'm going with QSP. Anybody has a better idea by tomorrow or day after? Swarali, yes. Last.
Like even it is not exactly from noun to adjective, but from verb to adjective. We do the suffix ta is used like धावता मुलगा उगवता सूर्य मावळता सूर्य. But that's a imperfect.
Yeah, that's the imperfect participle.
Okay. All right. Here's what I'm going to say. Anyone who wants to come up with a better, this is not a perfect, I'm not like super happy with it. But if you come up with something tomorrow, don't address it to me, address it to the class. If you can get, this is the baseline, okay? I don't care if anybody likes it or not. If you can get someone to prefer something else over this, we'll just have a vote. That's what we'll go for, whatever wins. Otherwise, this is how all of these are going to be glossed for lack of something better, okay? So, till tomorrow. I could give an incentive, but I can't think right now what incentive it will be, okay? But, okay, I'm making it a, little lighthearted. But the point I'm trying to make is that we've discovered something that has slightly different distribution than either this or this, right? Am I right? That there was some difference between, we were getting a three-way contrast. But even if we weren't getting a three-way contrast, I think we want to, no, we are getting a contrast, right? So Hindi, there was a difference between, who did the sa? You guys, right? Kaun sa and just kaun, kaun ladka versus kaun sa. There were some differences, right? And also in Marathi. So we have to have a way of saying this, right? That there's a structure which has this particle. And people who work further on this should be able to say the Hindi QSP is different from the Marathi QSP, for example. Or the Bhojpuri QSP is distinct from both of these in having this property, whatever it may be. So we have to give them a way of talking about it. Salman.
I think like the C, star or C is like another version of wala or wali. So like when we say something like that, kaun wala kitab or kaun wali kitab, we can say kaun si kitab, kaun sa kitab.
And kaun si wali?
Both also.
We can answer like that. Ki wo wali kitab, ye wali kitab.
और कौन सी वाली किताब तुम्हें चाहिए? Okay, ठीक है. Tomorrow, think, or maybe Saturday morning भी हो सकता है. I think Tomorrow is final presentations, submission, party. Uske baad, before you go to sleep, come up with something better. Otherwise, QSP it will be for question specificity or extra specificity, something. That's an option. Okay. I said no more thinking and then no more ideas and then I came up with something. Okay. Okay. All right. Let's get started on polar kya. So what I'm going to discuss today is the distribution. And I already know that the distribution of Hindi kya is different from the distribution of something similar in Gujarati, right? That's what we just discussed. And there may be other differences. Also, this is something, whenever one pair of eyes, or in this case, two pairs of eyes look at something, typically they don't exhaust the potential for, you see some things, when you look again, you see something more. In fact, that has already happened with us, because as we were presenting it at various places, questions came up and then, oh yeah, you can do it that way, that you start probing. So that's still a possibility. So, but I'm going to present the first part of our work, and it will bear on two things that I have introduced. Yeah, two or three themes that we have been discussing in the last few days. Theme number one, that, well, going backwards, not one necessarily in order, that polar questions are different in a qualitative way from all other types of questions, even polar alternative questions. So they are singleton sets, right? That is what I argued. Nothing to do with polar care, just separately. Two, that rogative predicates allow root phenomena in a way that responsive predicates typically don't, in the basic case don't. So in English, wonder did she leave, inversion, is okay. No, did she leave is not. But do you know did she leave is relatively better, right? So let me write down. One thing was polar question equals singleton set. Two, this is an old notion. This is perhaps an older idea, but wonder versus, or rogative versus responsive with respect to root phenomena. Maybe I should make this 2A and 2B, but whatever. Responsive versus Q, or yes, no responsive, or neg responsive with respect to root phenomena. So this is two parts of the same thing. Out of the blue, if you take a simple wonder, it allows inversion, but a responsive predicate doesn't. A responsive predicate doesn't, but if you gussy it up a little bit, embed it under negation or under Q-morpheme, it does. That's three. Maybe that's all that I had in mind. Okay, that will do. So what is the phenomena I'm going to look at? I'm going to look at this word kya, which we know in Hindi means what. We've seen it in the case of simple WH questions. What did you do? What did you eat? What do you think? And we have argued, or I have, that when you get scope marking, you also have the same what. Scope marking is a case of what do you think, plus a restriction on the propositions, right? That's my argument. So far I'm basically recognizing a single WH word that can range over objects, fruit, pen, what did you buy, what did you eat, or over propositions. So very often in every language, I think there's one word that people think of as a default or something. But so far, basically, it's that one word. It can range over, it has more flexibility with respect to what it can range over. Then when we did delinking, I think I tried to make the point that it's flexible, but not as flexible as you think. So if everything is of the same type, there's no distinguishing property, then this very flexible, easygoing what suddenly becomes, okay, enough, I can't do this, right? So it really it ranges over things that can be distinguished on the basis of some nameworthy property, however you want to characterize it. Now we are looking at, again, the same word, kya, but where it does not seem to have any thematic role. So we just call it polar kya. It's a way of describing its distribution. You see it with polar questions. There's nothing deeper than that in it. Why are we not calling it a Q morpheme or a clause typing particle? That's sort of what we wanted to just be neutral with respect to what it is. And this was a way of saying it's neutral, and in our minds, we had the idea that it's not the yes-no operator, because, one could say there's a yes-no operator in every language, and in Hindi, it can optionally have a lexical realization like kya, but not necessarily. That's also an option, right? So we kind of want to argue against that. And the other thing we want to kind of, I think, maybe in our initial version, we thought this was, we had a stronger feeling that it is not a clause typing particle. So the only analysis that we had seen of this is a very short description or a short explanation in Lisa Cheng's work on WH typology. In case, are you familiar with clause typing hypothesis? Not everybody, right? So the basic question she was trying to answer is not a simple question to answer at all. So the idea is, why do some languages have WH in situ and some languages have fronting? Right? It's a good question. We know that you can do it both ways, but why? And her idea, what she was trying to link the answer to this question to, was the presence or absence of a Q morpheme. Okay? So in her way of presenting this idea of analyzing kya and other such particles, the idea was natural language in general, universally, needs to distinguish between declarative and interrogative. That's a fundamental kind of a speech act distinction that every language has to find a formal way of distinguishing. And so that was sort of the idea. In a language that has a Q morpheme, there's a way of signaling this is an interrogative. In a language that has inversion or something, some kind of movement, some kind of syntactic cue, that gets signaled. So typically, languages that have WH in situ also don't have a difference between declarative and interrogative syntax for yes-no questions. Something like that. You should, if you're going to look at it more deeply, make sure you read the original work, but this is roughly my recollection of it. So we kind of were we are sort of arguing against these two positions. So starting with then the description. So yes-no questions are indicated prosodically, as we have been discussing. And so if you have the arrow at the end, so I'm looking at 1A, Anune Uma ko kitab di, up arrow is simply signaling rising intonation, that's a question. Anune Uma ko kitab di, or something like that. Whereas if you say Anune Uma ko kitab di, the down arrow, that's a declarative. So that's all we have, prosody. And now, so they say, unlike we say, Yes, no questions optionally occur with the WH word kya. And so what we are looking at is, so we saw the intonation is what's crucial, right? But the thing is that kya does not replace the role of intonation. You still, even when you have kya, you still need the intonation. Not in itself completely surprising. I mean, after all, even in English, you can do with intonation, you can do without syntax with intonation. But even when you have the syntactic cue, you still want the prosody. So this is not anything great, but surprising. But still, we decided to put it there. So क्या अनु ने उमा को किताब दी? That's fine. But क्या अनु ने उमा को किताब दी? This does not have a yes no question reading, so the intonation is important. And again, this kya is not the argument of any verb. This is, pretty obvious but worth stating. So you have, if you say Anu ne Uma ko kya diya, that's a thematic kya because it's taking up the theme argument. And so those are just names, polar versus thematic. And now what does four ratio? Kya Anu ne Uma ko kya diya? So this is the first distributional fact. So kya is not simply the prosody of a question, but it has a restriction that whatever kya does, it does only with yes no question, not with the WH question. By the way, if you disagree with any of the data, raise your hand, either in Hindi or in comparable, with a comparable particle in another language. So kya kisne Uma ko kitab di, doesn't matter, subject, object, whatever. And now this is the interesting one. This is the one that I'll discuss tomorrow, not today. So far I said polar questions we've discussed is the singleton set. Alternative questions are not singleton, right? You always have a multi-membered set. So here's one that looks like it's a problem. Which looks like it's not about so there's so far a two-way distinction. Polar questions are singletons. Alternative and WH questions are multi-membered sets. What we have seen is polar kya goes with yes no question. It doesn't go with WH questions, right? So far we can say it goes with singleton set questions, not with multi-membered set questions. However, we can say क्या तुम चाय पियोगे या coffee? And that sounds good, right? तुम क्या चाय पियोगे या coffee? So various combinations, but alternative questions seem to be good with kya. But we will try to find a way. We'll address this question later. I will address it tomorrow. Yes.
Can we say क्या तुम चाय पियोगी या क्या?
क्या तुम चाय पियोगे या क्या?
Or if we put the kya at the end, तुम चाय या कॉफी पियोगी क्या?
Okay, wait. Let's address his question. What did he? I will come back to yours in a minute. You said, "तुम चाय पियोगे या क्या?" What does that mean? I'm not. It's sort of okay, right? There's a sense. Or what? Yeah, but are you asking? I'm trying to get. See, we have these intuitions, right? This is all stuff that is not coming from English, right? Maybe now we can. Who was saying they're going to work on what? Yeah, you guys are going to work on. Okay, tomorrow we'll find out more. But what does this question mean? So potentially, to the extent that it is okay, it can mean, will you have tea or choose from whatever what can mean. So I will choose, either I will choose chai or I will give an answer, yeah, juice or something, whatever. Is that the meaning you're getting?
Yes.
तुम चाय पियोगे या क्या? Okay, I have not thought about this, but let me write it down. Let's think about, yes, Karki.
Isn't he said क्या तुम चाय पियोगे या क्या?
Oh, you had kya in the first one.
First one is the polar kya, means
Okay.
yes no question, and the second one is the thematic kya.
It's like something else या कुछ और
Okay. So ya kuch aur, is that what it means? Okay. Okay, then it's a bit like this. Instead of stating, it's like a bit like 5. You're saying, क्या तुम चाय पियोगे या कुछ or something else. So it's not a question. It's instead of saying yeah coffee, you're leaving it open or something else, and you can answer whatever you want. So technically, I could answer something else. Then you would ask kya. So okay, I will. No, you said kya, right? Okay, I'm getting confused. The sentence you gave me was क्या तुम चाय पियोगे या क्या? That was your question. And we are saying that it means, will you have tea or something else? Okay, all right. Okay, quick, we will only do it for like 1 minute because, I want to see Hindi speakers or people who have analogous structures in their language, who allow clause initial kya. Do you get this reading for the sentence? क्या तुम चाय पियोगे या क्या? ऐसे बोलना है ना? So how many people get this meaning? So you're giving the person a choice. You're specifying one thing, tea, and then you're asking what else or something else, right?
Typically, I wouldn't have the kya in the beginning, but the polar intonation.
Or another reading is possible where you're aggressively asking the person, are you going to drink tea or what? Or not.
Yeah. So that was that was not it. That's why I asked what I was getting that reading. Are you going to have tea or not?
No, it means
Or kuch. So that is the meaning that Pratik is pushing for. And I see that Pratik and Avinash and ek aur haath ke dekha tha. Gargi.
I get that in Hindi, no problem.
Because because you don't have it in Gujarati quite this way, right? Because you only want final. Okay. So we'll put you in that group. So I have 4 yeses.
I can do this in Bangla and get both.
Okay, so I will put you in the 5 yeses.
If I change the intonation.
Okay, internet.
ईस्टर्न वाले हैं
आप कहाँ के हैं? Banaras. Now you're claiming Banaras. So, but as far as Hindi goes, Banaras. Okay. No, but I actually want to see how many people don't get it because I never looked at it before. No, me kaun hai? Perhaps I won't count myself. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, this is not statistically overwhelmingly. I can say Gargi, that's you, Jao. I have nothing to say. Yeah, Pratik, this is your thing. ये भोजपुरी वालों को नहीं ये मिल रहा है ये रीडिंग नहीं आ रहा है हाथ बढ़ाया था जब तो 10 हो गया ना फिर मेरे अकाउंट में No, I'm just trying to make light. These are things we need to think about. I'm just trying to get a sense of which way, like I don't have a theory right now that I would, immediately push. But I do want to take it into account. Praveen?
Once you're done with this, I have something to ask regarding fifth.
Okay. And I think Swarali had a different independent point, which was?
Yes,
Okay. Hi, everybody. We are back to business.
The polar kya can also be at the sentence final position.
Yeah.
तुम चाय पियोगी क्या? So if I say तुम चाय या coffee पियोगी क्या, then I'm not asking it for the alternative. I'm just asking if you would have any
either of them. Yes. So we will come to that. Alternative. So I'm going to put my cards on the table. I don't want to argue for it today because I want to check on something. But what we are going to say is this one looks like an alternative question. It is an alternative question. But we still want to say that kya only goes with polar questions. And we will try to explain this data by looking at a number of other options. Okay? So that's a general line. Yes, Praveen.
Regarding Swarali's quick point, it is possible that it is not really an alternative. what you're doing is you're clubbing chai or coffee as part of the hot drink stuff.
Yeah, which is a yes/no question.
Yes, which
Yeah.
is largely a yes/no question.
But that's not what this is showing, is that you're not clubbing this. So you see that pitch accent on chai piyoge? Yeah,
So
coffee.
the point is
Drop.
when you said it with the kya, when you speak it,
Yeah.
there is something else, because for me the more natural would be tum chai piyoge ya coffee.
Yeah, no, that's definitely
when
natural.
When I say kya tum chai piyoge ya coffee,
Okay.
so the with the kya is it takes away the
alternative and gives.
It takes away something from the sentence for me.
Granted. Something is going on with alternative questions that are not straightforward. So let's agree that we will set aside alternative questions for now. Okay? And if we just look at WH questions and polar questions, then we can stick with this idea that polar questions are singleton sets. Any felicitous WH information seeking WH question should range over plurality, right? That's when you can show ignorance. When we say a question is felicitous if the speaker doesn't know the answer. And you can only not know the answer if there's a possibility of two things, right? So it will be a multi-membered set. So that's the generalization we are going with for now. So looking at, I think we will look through this. So distribution of polar care. Now we come to the position. Okay. So one thing is that in the distribution is yes, no, but not WH. And that I think everybody would agree with, right? Okay. Oh, chai aa gayi. So let's have chai coffee bhi hai? Nahin. Chai piyoge kya? And in fact, you can say chai or coffee piyoge kya? But we don't have any coffee. So if you say yes, that means you will get tea. Okay, so let's break short break. Just get your tea, drink, come back. No chit chat nahi hona hai. The class will not take very long, but let's. This looks like maybe I read it wrong.
Let's come back.
You still don't like it. So no, we actually looked through a bunch of alternative questions. So our basic analysis is that if alternative question can usually ask them a yes no question over one of them. And then you bring in something like that. There's something that इस वक्त लोग को काफी discussion हुआ है पहले Romero and Han had taken judgments from Rajesh for something that later we realized because of the process of both. So there is more to it, but I have to refresh. No. What we mean by saying yes or no, like meaning कुछ और.
Yeah, for a Hindi speaker, it will be tum chai piyoge ya kuch aur.
That is
Very
perfect.
important. When he said yeah kya, there is something, maybe the length of the pause.
It can even mean to me, yes, do you want tea or something else? Are you here? तुम किस लिए आए हो? चाय पीने आए हो या कुछ और? So there is something, but I also kind of get that. But in any case, I think you want to be able to think such things because this is how you build a. आप क्लास आइए चाय पी के आइए आपको I will. Oh yes, that was the third. all over, but there's some.
You mentioned that chemical reason that is also but